Okay, section 8.7, function notation. Now notice this is 8.7. We pull it towards the end because we're going to change gears a little bit, but not drastically. But if we keep it where it's at, it can be a little confusing, more confusing than it needs to be. So, all right, the concept of this lesson is that the downside is we're going to change something we've been doing all chapter. Everywhere we've seen y equals, we're not going to call it y anymore. Instead, we're going to call it f of x. And this is how you read it. F of x. And it has it written right here, f of x. The good side of this, before I get into that a little more detailed, is that from here, after that change is made, everything else is the same. You solve it the same, you graph it the same, everything else is the same. It's pretty much just a review lesson. But we do have to get accustomed to this. So let's take a look. Here we have y equals x plus 2. When it's written in function notation, it looks like this. F of x equals x plus 2. This f of x, notice, is in the same place as the y. So essentially, f of x is the same thing as y. They are exactly the same thing. You might say, well, why are we changing it now? There's a couple reasons I'll be explaining as we go through through this lesson. But before we move on to that, we want to identify a few key things so you don't get confused. This is f of x, but these are not separate things. This f is always going to be with this parentheses and x. Sometimes there will be a number in here maybe, but you're never just going to see f. Never. And this does not mean these are being multiplied or anything. It's kind of just like when we did probability. We would say the probability of rolling an even number, parentheses equals, and then we would do all our work. That's what this is. It's just like notation. This is just saying the function of x, whatever x may be. The function, when we put x into our equation, that's what we're really looking at. So just like you would never see p by itself, you can't solve for p. Same here, you're not going to solve for f. Okay? So let's try a couple, and then we'll see where we go. Working with function notation, they're giving us f of x is equal to negative 3x plus 8. This is a clump. It will not be separated, okay? This f can change to a different letter and so can the x, but it's a clump. That's the key thing. Remember, it's not going anywhere. It's one big term, so to say. All right, so example A, find f of x when x is 5. So that means they want me to find f of x, find this side of my equation when x is 5. So I'm going to go ahead and where there is an x, I'm going to put 5. Then I'm just going to simplify. Negative 15 plus 8, negative 7. So find f of x when x equals 5. F of x. Whoop. That one can't write. Doesn't seem. F of x is equal to, let me rewrite that so it doesn't confuse us. F of x is equal to negative 7. Okay, let's try another one just like that. Find f of x. Find that whole clump when x equals 1. So really I start out with what I have. They're telling me x is equal to 1. So where there's a 1, I put in, or where there's an x, I put a 1. I get negative 3 plus 8. My answer is positive 5. Okay? So f of x is equal to 5. I'll write it over. Sorry for the erasing. Just easier if I write it off to the side for the next problem. So I get f of x equals 5. Now some people say, wait a minute, why do we plug it in for this side and not this side? You can put it in here too if you'd like it. Technically it should be in there, but we're just getting used to this. So you could say f of 1, and then your answer you have f of 1 is equal to 5, and over here you'd have f of 5 is equal to negative 7. We're just going to practice these a lot. In class we'll practice them a whole bunch, so you should be good to go, but this is a good reinforcer. Before we go to C and D, let's try another one, letter A. Now you might say, oh great, there's another new thing, g of x. But g of x, it's just another way of representing. It's the same thing as f of x, okay? But notice we have our equation still. So find g of x, find that whole clump when x equals 2. So I start with my original. They want to tell me that x is 2. So I can put 2 in here, but again, these aren't being multiplied. Nothing's changing here. This is just a notation. This is just saying, here's a little clue. We're using 2 to equal x. That's really what it is. It's like a little cheat sheet for the rest of the problem. So now I go through, I put 2 into x into the problem. I get 8, 8 minus 5, 3. So g of 2 is equal to 3. That's how you do it, okay? Now let's look at the next part, letter C, going back up. Letter C says find x when f of x is equal to negative 22. So we go to our original, f of x equals negative 3x plus 8. They're telling me that whole clump f of x is negative 22. So in place of that whole thing, I'm going to put negative 22. What are they asking me to find? They're asking me to find x, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to solve for x. Subtract 8, I get negative 30 equals negative 3x. X is equal to 10. I solve for x. So see, you solve it the same way, it's just getting past that initial notation. Here, find x when f of x is equal to 29. So I go f of x equals negative 3x plus 8. F of x, that whole term, is 29. So where there was f of x, I'm going to put 29. And they want me to find x, so I'm going to solve for x. I'm going to subtract 8. I get 21 equals negative 3x. X equals negative 7. Okay? All right, let's try letter C down here. We'll come back to letter B. Find x when g of x is 19. So I start with my original, g of x, which equals 4x minus 5. G of x is 19, so that goes away. That whole thing is 19. They want me to find x. So I'm going to add 5 to both sides. I get 24 is equal to 4x. Divide by 4. X equals 6. Okay? All right, now we skipped this one that was right here. We're going to come back to it here. We have, if you don't mind, I'm going to move it, not to make it lots on the paper, but I'm going to move it over to here just to clear up. We have a lot going on, so down here it's kind of smushed. G of negative 10 is what they want me to find. You might say, well, wait, are we finding x, g of x, who knows what? Well, remember that the general notation is g of x or f of x or t of x or h of x. It could be any of these letters, the first one, but this is in the x place. So in this problem, what they're really telling me is x has been replaced and it's negative 10. So this is like them saying x equals negative 10. Find, if they're giving me x, the only thing left to find is g of x, that whole clump. You might say, but it's right here, but that's not true. Remember, this is just in the x place. We have to find the whole term, g of x, okay? So let's go through it. G of x is equal to 4x, positive, 4x minus 5. I'm getting that right from here. They're telling me it's g of 10, negative 10. So this, again, is just telling me what x is being replaced with, negative 10. On the right side is where I actually go ahead and solve that. So I get negative 40 minus 5, negative 45. And that's my answer. It's very similar to whenever they're giving me f of x and I have to solve to find, or when they give me x, I have to solve to find the function term. Okay? This is basically like, this is the first name. This is you personally. Maybe your first name is Mike. This is like Mike Jones. Okay, so it's like the specific person. So everything we've looked at, this is what we've been doing. Now we're changing, it's like a person. We're changing their clothes. We're putting them in a different